The hottest topic of conversation in Harrisburg is the budget. Let's take a look next on Behind the Headlines.
This is Behind the Headlines, with behind-the-scenes analysis on issues affecting Pennsylvanians, sponsored by the Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy. Now, here's your host.
Hi, welcome to a new edition of Behind the Headlines. I'm Charlie Greenwald, Senior Fellow of the Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy. And we come to you at a sad time of the new year. Our condolences and our best wishes and our prayers go to our friends in Japan. That was a horrible sequence of events, and we hope that Japan will rebound and be stronger and better than ever. We also want to note the sad passing of our friend and our board member, Robert Long. Bob Long has been for years one of the best municipal attorneys in the state of Pennsylvania. He's been a board member of Susquehanna Valley Center since our inception. And he was a good friend and certainly one of the most knowledgeable people about Pennsylvania's state constitution. We'll miss you, Bob. Mara, why don't you introduce our guest for our show today?
Sure. We're really very pleased to have Dave Sanko, who's the Executive Director of the Pennsylvania State Association of Township Supervisors. PSATs, right? PSATs. Correct. Yes.
That's it.
We're always very fortunate to have you with us, and we're right now, of course, right into the middle of budget season, and
quite a budget it is.
It really is.
Really generated a lot of discussion.
A lot of challenges. I think there was a lot of anticipation. I think everyone knows it's going to be a difficult budget season. There is hardly anybody that isn't impacted in some way by what's been proposed by the governor. So let's start and talk about the townships and what was your gut reaction to what you heard?
Well, I think generally, as we we waited with anticipation, as did everyone, for the budget announcement. You'll recall in an earlier this year, we had asked for in our Christmas stocking common sense. And I think this budget does represent a return to common sense budgeting in the Commonwealth. While it represents shared pain for many groups, it finally builds a budget based on what revenues you have, as opposed to building the spending side first and then trying to figure out how to find the money to pay for it.
Well, it seems that all the sides are lining up, both for and against various aspects of the budget. Tell us a little bit about what you like about the budget proposal and what you might have some significant concerns with.
Well, I think from a local government perspective, local government has not, at least in Pennsylvania, been the recipient of all kinds of block grants and funding, traditionally coming from the state, and has largely been self-sustaining. So it's not as though there's a lot of money that could have been taken away from local government. So, but that being said, some of the programs that we do rely on, shared municipal services and land use training, the cuts that were in place from prior years were maintained. But we've, as townships have learned how to do more with less, and have been doing that for a long time. We're actually encouraged that the budgeting process that we've used at the municipal level is now one that is being used at the state level. Only spend what you have.
Well, how does this year's proposed budget compare to last year's budget, Dave, in regard to townships?
In regard to townships, the cuts from last year were maintained this year. They were not dramatically added to, but as I said, there wasn't a lot going there anyway. What we're hopeful to see come out of this budget process, and one of the things that Governor Corbett talked about was mandate relief. And that while we wouldn't see cash coming from the budget, the relief on electronic advertising or bidding reforms would provide substantial revenue savings to local governments that will free up money for them to be able to do other necessary services.
Well, there are a couple of different flashpoints in this budget. Education seems to be one of them. But one of the other big issues is the fact that there's no proposed tax on Marcellus Shale. And I know that your organization and across the state there have been varying positions on that. What are you communicating to the governor's office on that particular issue of no taxes?
Well, there are tremendous costs that are associated, and local communities are being forced to bear.
Huge impact on
tremendous
local
impact
yeah.
on the communities, from roads and transportation to detours and just taking them longer to get to work and the doctors and to school, not to mention some of the infrastructure challenges. Those are costs that we think that the industry needs to have some responsibility for. We're not, we advocate this cost recovery system for local governments not as a tax on Pennsylvanians, but as a tax for Pennsylvanians. And absent there being some sort of Marcellus fee structure, property taxes in those local communities will have to go up to cover that. And we're adamantly opposed to that. I've been fortunate to be appointed to the Governor's Marcellus Shale Commission and intend to represent the townships there and intend on pressing forward with local government, environmental interests, and members of the industry to come to a common sense balance for some, and hopefully have those costs reimbursed to the local municipalities.
Great.
Well, since the budget's released, Dave, we've heard some of the downsides, some of the negative points of it, some of the layoffs that might be coming, some of the spending cuts that might be coming, but there seem to be one or two positive things for local government, aren't there? What might they be?
Well, I think one of the things that local government's been doing for a number of years to help meet their bottom line has been partnering with neighboring communities and doing shared services and doing intergovernmental cooperation. And Governor Corbett said in advance that he was going to try and find a way to incentivize that type of cooperation. Our initial review of the DCED budget lines suggests that while many programs have been collapsed and it's hard to kind of sort out what's been added and what's been subtracted, it seems as though there may be a specialized program in development to encourage shared services, and we're pleased and look forward to being able to participate in that, because ultimately at the end of the day we're all serving the same constituents, the same taxpayers, and we all have a responsibility to get them the best available services at the least affordable price.
Well, everyone's very jealous of the state police this year in the budget because they had significant increase in funding and new classes of state troopers, and I know that there are a lot of townships that rely on those services, so I would imagine that you feel very positively about this increase in funding.
Well, I think from a state police perspective, there are large portions of Pennsylvania that rely exclusively on state police coverage. But let's be clear on that. State police, Pennsylvania State Police was created as one of the oldest state polices in the Commonwealth or in the country. It provides a baseline level of service in every community, whether they have a local police department or not. Many communities will often want to upgrade that level and put their own local police department on. Others are quite content with the level and quality of service that state police provides, and it does represent large chunks of rural Pennsylvania.
Well, so then the increase in state troopers out there would be helpful across the entire state.
I think it would, but I think if I saw the numbers, that increase will enable us to stem the tide of retirements. So I'd like to think it's going to be additional troopers on the ground, and hopefully it will. But given some of the recent retirement trends, it may just enable us to keep our heads above water.
Mm-hmm. Of course, the troopers spend a lot of time on the road as well, and of course, roads and bridges are one of the foremost concerns of the townships and of local government. What does this budget have in it, Dave, regarding roads and bridges and local government? Well,
roads and bridges are traditionally dealt with in the Motor License Fund, which is an offline, not in the main budget. So we've not seen any increases or decreases in there, and are looking forward to having the opportunity to address with the governor and with the legislature and the administration some of the dire challenges that our transportation system is facing. We have probably $3 billion of unmet needs in transportation infrastructure challenges, and some of that is necessitated by just our geography, the freeze and thaw of being where we are. Some of it is necessitated.
Pothole season right now.
It is. We are in the heart of the beginning of pothole season, and those things they're costly, and we look forward. Local government maintains 2/3 of all the highway miles in Pennsylvania. So we have a very, very strong interest in ensuring that our infrastructure is sound, that it's a good vehicle for economic development. It's a key part of our educational system. It's part of our public safety network. It is indeed the backbone on which all of our other systems ride.
Well, we do tend to focus a lot on the budget right now, but do you have any other major initiatives that you're going to be focused on for 2011?
Well, I think, clearly the Marcellus impact in Pennsylvania is significant. Between that and transportation infrastructure, working for shared services, and mandate relief. I think mandate relief is one of the things that we can look forward to moving forward, where the Commonwealth can actually play a role at no cost to the Commonwealth. To alleviate some of the costs and burdens on local governments and school districts and the cost of doing business.
You mentioned earlier, Dave, DECD, the Department of Community and Economic Development for the state, and how it's being affected by this budget. And of course, they have a wonderful crackerjack new secretary in Alan Walker, but you work with DECD quite a bit, and I was wondering what your impression was of the effect that this budget will have on it and the Center for Local Government Services, which I believe your organization also works with.
I think what we saw on the budget proposal for DCED was the streamlining and consolidation of a myriad of programs to be more efficient. Maybe going from 120 or 130 some programs down to 55 line items. Although I don't think that means any of the programs were eliminated. They were just streamlined, and duplication will be able to filter it out.
And hopefully will run more efficiently.
And should run more efficiently and more cost effectively, and that should free up some cost savings. As it relates to the Center for Local Government Services, we are hopeful and will work with them to try and restore the center to its traditional role of being partners with local government and advocates for local government in terms of providing the tools and training that local officials need to be able to use best practices from all across the Commonwealth. Some of that has slipped away as a result of budget cuts in recent years, and frankly a shifting of mission, where they've become more concerned with focusing on larger urban areas. And we want to remind them that there are indeed 12 million Pennsylvanians, and they don't all live in cities.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Good. Well, what do you think are the biggest challenges that our new governor is going to face with this budget?
I think clearly moving with the legislature as they look at the cost of corrections, the cost of education, the cost of public welfare department. Mm-hmm. Those are all significant challenges. I spent a little bit of time in state government, and probably the greatest challenge is just addressing the change in the culture. Mm-hmm. And saying we can only have what we can afford, instead of boy, it'd be nice.
Spend. Yeah.
And it really forces us it will force the legislature and the administration to be able to really define the differences between wants and needs.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, thank you very much for sharing your time with us today, Dave, and
thank you.
Sharing your observations with us. This is certainly a budget season that bears watching, and we'll see whether or not does the new governor get a budget on time, since the past governor couldn't do it 8 times in a row. We'll see if this governor...
I'm betting it's going to be on time.
Yeah. It always is in tough seasons.
Okay, well, we'll look forward to having you back very soon, and we'll be back with the second segment of Behind the Headlines right after this.
Behind the Headlines is sponsored in part by Connections Academy.
If you were going to build a school around your kid, how would you do it? Fewer distractions? More attention from the teacher? More flexible schedule? More parental involvement? We're Connections Academy, a free online public school that creates a learning experience more focused on your child. Help your child make a stronger connection to learning at Connections Academy.
Behind the Headlines is brought to you as a public service by the Pennsylvania Business Council, envisioning a commonwealth in which residents enjoy a very high quality of life in sustainable communities. The Council works aggressively to define key long-term policy strategies and solutions that make the Commonwealth more competitive, creating and sustaining a better Pennsylvania. Additional underwriting provided by the Worrell Corporation Foundation, based in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, by the Edward H. and Jeannie Arnold Foundation, and the American Home Bank, a nationally chartered and FDIC-insured yet locally owned and operated bank in central Pennsylvania, and by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business. Behind the Headlines is also supported as a public service by Daily Express, transporting construction, farm, and industrial equipment throughout the United States. And by Penn Waste, your best local choice for your waste removal and recycling needs.
Hi, welcome to the second segment of Behind the Headlines, and on this segment, Maura and I are lucky enough to have with us Dave Taylor, the Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Dave has been with us in the past, and there's no one better in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to talk about jobs and manufacturing and the role of business. Dave, welcome to the show.
Great to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
It's so good to have you back. I'm going to let Maura throw the first. I know she's dying to ask you one overarching question, and then I want to jump in at some point, but I'll turn it over to you, Maura.
Well, it's crazy season.
It certainly is.
It's budget season. The governor's under fire for his budget, and hearing a lot of negative, getting a lot of negative press for it. I mean, I don't think anybody doubts that it was going to be a tough year, but some of the cuts are pretty significant. So from PMA's perspective, and yours personally even, what do you think about the
Well, I mean, Governor Corbett is attempting to address the challenge of our times.
Yeah.
And there's one central fact underlying all of this. It is unhealthy for our economy when government spends money faster than people can earn it.
Okay.
And for year after year, decade after decade, the Harrisburg has been doing exactly that, spending money faster than people can earn it. And when government growth outstrips private sector growth, inevitably it causes a drag on the economy, and that all of us pay the price in the course of in not just higher taxes, but also with slower wage growth, slower job growth, as a result, slower population growth. And so I think that Governor Corbett is coming from exactly the right place, certainly within the parameters of what he put forward. There will be changes. I know that people are unhappy with the reductions to the higher ed budget in particular. But
People might say slashes to the higher education
budget.
Well,
it's and again, those are all things for the legislature to hammer out.
Well, do you think the governor presented it as the worst case scenario so that he has the ability to move back to sort of a central
I think
meeting point with everybody?
think that the governor's spend number of $27.3 billion becomes the ceiling for the debates. How the dollars get allocated within that amount, that's still open for debate and discussion. But in this environment, I don't think that there's any appetite for the tax increase that will be necessary to bring in additional monies to account for new spending. And let me just respond in particular to the comments by Senator Jay Costa of Allegheny County, the Senate Democrat leader, where he says that in this budget that there is no shared sacrifice because there is no tax increase on the business community. Well, let me tell you what, the business community has been bearing the burden for 20 years.
Yeah.
That, the crippling tax hike on business in 1991 inflicted major damage on our economy.
Still feeling the effects.
And that's exactly right. That for all the years that it's taken us to claw back towards where we were pre-91, the world has not stood still. Competitiveness is a moving target. And so for Senator Costa and people of his perspective to say somehow that the business community isn't bearing the burden is just absolutely untrue, and that Governor Corbett has it exactly right, where he says that the private sector is where wealth is generated, where jobs, sustainable jobs, family sustaining jobs come from. And so yes, it's always fun to spend other people's money, but the fact is we've done it too much for too long, and the day of reckoning is upon us.
Well, you said just a moment ago that we find that government's spending money faster than we can earn it, and this is something that perhaps has concerned me about all of the attempts to get a hold of this particular situation, and that is, did we have enough discussion? Is Governor Christie or the other governors that are addressing this same situation, Dave, are we having enough discussion of actual growth, how we're going to create wealth, and we're going to try to bring ourselves back? Or are we just fighting over the dwindling amount of money that we have in our pocket and which pocket we're going to put it in?
Well, I mean, the growth is dynamic. When it is occurring, a rising tide lifts all ships. And so you've seen pro-growth governors like Governor Daniels in Indiana, certainly Governor Christie in New Jersey is just getting started good, but there are bold pro-growth leaders who are in office in the executive positions across the country. Bob McDonnell in Virginia is another example. Certainly, Governor Walker, newly elected in Wisconsin, trying to right the ship of state out there in the Badger State. And the pushback from public sector employees has been obviously has been profound, but the public sector cannot be immune from the same economic realities that the taxpayers live under. And to have the taxpayers, whether individuals or employers, paying unsustainably high taxes so that public employees can be held harmless at the same time that the taxpayers themselves have to do more with less, pare back, and tighten belts. It's just not right.
What is Governor Corbett proposing in this budget that will result in the growth of the economy? And is there anything else that you would like to see?
Well, I mean, in terms of, the first and most important thing is to arrest the out-of-control rate of spending. And in this budget, as proposed, Governor Corbett does that. He also makes an important down payment on our future with committing to the demise of the capital stock and franchise tax, and just so.
Do you think it'll actually happen?
Well, I believe that it will, and here's why
it's important.
We've been
talking about since 1985.
We have. Well, when Governor Ridge put the initial phase out into effect. Under that plan, the Commonwealth was to stop collecting the capital stock and franchise tax January 1, 2009. We're obviously well past that point by now. But what folks must understand is that most states don't have both a business income tax and a business assets tax. Pennsylvania has both, collects both, has among the highest rates in the nation. In both. And that's why getting rid of the capital stock and franchise tax, which is a business assets tax, is so important to get rid of that competitive disadvantage, and also because the CSFT is paid even in years when an employer is losing money. And so it's a very destructive tax, and it's a positive sign from Governor Corbett that they're committing to moving that on. Another important thing included in recent events in the administration was that the administration has committed to passing along the savings to employers resulting from the federal tax agreement in December with President Obama and Congress, encouraging employers to recapitalize, to invest in new production equipment by accelerating depreciation of those assets. Now, the governor could have deliberately decoupled state law from federal law to deny that additional benefit to employers. The administration didn't do that. They said, we want that new investment for new production. Expanded capacity means expanded production. Expanded production means expanded hiring. We want those gains in Pennsylvania.
Well, that business is always very concerned about education.
Yes.
And there's significant cuts being proposed in this budget in education. How do you feel about those?
Well, I mean, in terms of the subsidy for basic education, public K through 12, there was a stimulus bubble where Governor Rendell and his team plowed hundreds of millions of additional dollars into the subsidy for basic ed. So in this budget, We are returning to the
Pre-stimulus.
the pre-stimulus levels, 2008, 2009. I know it was a long time ago. It's hard to remember. You know, back when we thought Tiger Woods was an okay guy. Back when Ted Kennedy was still alive. I mean, you know, Charlie Sheen was still shooting 2.5 men.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it's a long way back.
Insane.
You know, but here's the thing: the baseline on the education subsidy. It was unsustainable at those levels. It had been larded up in recent years, and so even by returning to 2008, 2009 levels, we are still spending more money than ever before, except for the last year or two.
Larded up. I like that. I might have to use that one.
I call them like I see them.
Yeah, very good.
Well, being the executive director of the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association, one traditionally associates manufacturing jobs as forming the backbone of the middle class of America. And right now there's certainly been a concern over the last several years about America's disappearing middle class. Lou Dobbs wrote a very good book about that not so long ago. You notice he's been resurrected on Fox. He's not only on Fox Business, but now he's going to have a news show on the Fox News Channel. But how do you look upon manufacturing supporting, constituting the middle class at this point,
I mean,
Dave? Does the middle class have a future in America?
Well, I mean, absolutely. I mean, again, despite all of our challenges and all of the setbacks, I mean, we're still the largest economy on earth. We're still one of the wealthiest nations in the world, no matter how you measure it, and that much of that wealth is derived from the intangible assets of our institutions, the fact that our judicial system works without having to bribe people, that we have transparency. I mean, the great legacy of American liberty and free enterprise is resilient, but we must not take it for granted, and we must not abuse it. Manufacturing remains the largest contributor to America's economy and to Pennsylvania's economy. It has the strongest spin-off effect on jobs because it's not just those jobs in direct production, but it's also all the jobs down the distribution network, or down the supply chain, and all the jobs out the distribution network. So it sustains. There are 550,000 Pennsylvanians roughly directly employed in manufacturing, but many millions of additional jobs are sustained.
Absolutely. Generally, it's 1 to 3.
Right.
One job manufacturing, 3 service jobs.
Exactly.
That's yeah. Well, in the last 30 seconds here, what is the PMA going to be doing here in the forthcoming budget season and the forthcoming year? What initiatives do you have?
Well, I mean, the major issues that are at play are the ones that we are most directly involved in, helping Governor Corbett to achieve an on-time, no-tax increase budget. Helping Senator Piccola and Senator Williams with their education reform efforts, and primarily focusing on limiting lawsuit abuse, as Governor Corbett called for in his budget address, and the privatization initiatives, including selling off the state stores. Those are the major issues of the day, and we're involved in all of them.
Sounds like we'll have to have you back to talk about more of those in detail.
I look forward to it.
Yeah, good.
Thank you very much, Dave. We appreciate you being with us.
My pleasure.
So please check us out on the web, Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy, voiceofpa.net. You can see all of our shows archived there as well. Check us out on YouTube as well. We'll be with you next week, same time, same place. We'll see you then.